Hello everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Lol. Um, so today we're going to be working on a landing page. I'll just get closer to the mic here. Yeah, we're going to be working on a landing page. And I think the big part of this work is going to be how to make that landing page like responsive. Yeah, so a couple of things I'll be demoing today. Let me see if I can get pull my shortcuts up here. Cool, let's see if they work. Okay, I don't think that's gonna work, so I'm gonna use something else. Cool beans. Sorry about the false start. All right, so in order to get started here, two things that I want to demo. So the most important one is the landing page, but the first one is we're going to run an automation to create a file structure. The only reason why I'm doing this is just so that I can get used to it. So this file structure will create different files. It'll add a cover component that I have set up. I'm going to set that as a thumbnail. I'm going to call this, you guys might not be able to see that, so I'm going to call this landing page YT. And my name, Emily. Great. So yeah, then under the designs, you'll see that we have a couple of like on canvas guides and stuff like that. And then for handoff, we have something else. We have an on canvas guide. Then we have like workspaces. So you'll see that you have screens, section titles, you have screen titles, and you have placeholders for screens. So yeah, it's gonna get into the flow. The other thing that I want to do is I want to enable a library. So in order for this whole thing to work, me personally, I'm going to need two libraries. And that's simply because of the way I work, and I'll explain what that means or how that is. I'm going to disable that one. Cool. So I'm going to use Untitled. It's a very nice UI kit. Everybody knows about it. And I'm going to use another library called Quiz. So in Quizzy we have certain helpers that make the work that we do a bit easier. So for example, this workspace itself comes from, it's a component within Quizzy. You can also see that the cover name is also coming from Quizzy. So yeah, Quizzy is a helper library, if that's something that's a term, but that's how I want to call it. Perfect. So let's start with our landing page. So typically, I'll do my work here in the design section, and then I'll create a frame by pressing F. I'll create a size. So I'll select MacBook. I think it's MacBook 15-inch. And then maybe I'll just rename this to 1000 dash landing page. Sorry. Cool beans. And then I'm going to select that, and I'm going to make that an auto layout. Right, so auto layout has now been added. I'm now going to switch over to the asset panel. So the preconditions for this to work are three. So you have to have a good UI kit or design system, component library, whatever you want to call it. So you have to have a very good one that has variants of desktop and mobile, and it would be better if it had desktop, tablet, and mobile. Then you also need to make sure that you do your customizations with that intact. So with the actual components not being detached. I think that will be good. And then the last one, which is like the third but most debatable one, not debatable, but like not necessarily mandatory, you'd need to also be fairly good at auto layout. So because I am all of those three things, and I've created a helper library, and I probably should show you how that works. So I'm just going to drag this in so that I can be able to navigate to this library so I can show you how it is that I've set things up. So I'm using variables to control the width of the page. So instead of relying on that value, I set a minimum value which is bound to a variable. So that minimum width is bound to a variable. And then I'm also going to set a maximum value which is also bound to a variable. Now what that allows me to do is that this screen size is 1512, as you can see, but as I put my mouse on there, you'll see two red lines that show up that show us the minimum and the maximum boundaries for the screen now. So this is great because I can now change this. I can change the device breakpoints because my variables are bound for minimum and maximum width on this actual frame. I can change my breakpoints into tablet, and for tablet this changes, so it's now 768 pixels wide. That's the minimum width, and I'll show you that here. And the maximum width is 1024, right? And then I can also do that for mobile, and you'll also be able to see that minimum width is 320 and maximum width is 414, right? So that's how I set up my pages. So at this point I'm just going to set this up to be auto, which is by default the first variable that's there. Now how does this work? So let's get to an empty page so you're not distracted by all of the stuff. Great. So this is Quasi from where I'm driving my variables. I have a device breakpoints variables. It's a collection, sorry. So in that collection, you see I set the max width for desktop, tablet, and mobile. I set them all up. And then I set a minimum width for the same desktop, tablet, and mobile, and all the same. And then I also add a special feature for just because I like to control padding in some cases, of 64 for desktop, 24 for tablet, and 16 for mobile. I think you can now bind these to actual variables so that this is actually dynamic on its own. So if you have a value that you want to bind that to, that's actually possible now. Last but not least, I have a string variable, which is essentially just echoing out the name of what mode we're in. So desktop, tablet, and mobile. As you can see, that's a hat on a hat. And then I have in some cases you might need to do some dynamic show and hide stuff. So I have some Boolean properties where if there's something that I want to show only on desktop, then I would apply that Boolean property. And if there's something I want to show only on tablet, then I would apply that. And there's something I want to show only on mobile, then I would apply this Boolean property. So you'll see that for that, on this visible on mobile Boolean property is false on desktop and is false on tablet, but it's only true for mobile. The same goes for, sorry, it's a bit different for tablet. You have false on desktop, true for tablet, false for mobile. And then for visible on desktop, that property has true only on desktop, and tablet and mobile is both false. The one thing that I've noticed while I've used this is that the tablet stuff is never really intentionally created. Like, I think that's one shortfall of what I've seen in Untitled. So tablet is really just sometimes in the middle, and depending from which state that you switch from, it inherits that view. I'll show you what that means. So I just wanted to take you through my variables and how they look. And this you can set up each time in a file, or do the smart thing and maybe publish it from a specific library if you have that leeway. I think that will be good for you. Cool. I'm gonna close that now. So yeah, let's go into our little landing page that we're creating. So we know the structure of some landing pages. We know we're going to have a, let's call it a header section, right? So I'm just going to quickly go through the stuff here. Header section, cool. I'm going to select a hero header section. Just going to drag that in maybe. It does take some time sometimes. And I think that's because of the size of the library, but yeah. So that's now in there. I just need to also make sure that the direction of our auto layout is vertical, because that's how we want to set it up. I'm also going to make the padding on the sides 0, but I'm actually going to, I'll show you how I apply the padding that I use, that I get from Quasi. So this has to be full. It has to fill the container. And this size I remember was 1512. Cool. Wonderful. Right, so we've got something now. And then maybe let's add a what do they call it? Social proof section. You know those sections where you talk about like you've been mentioned in such and such a place. I'm also setting, you see that I'm setting as the components are coming in, I'm setting them to be full width so that they take up all this available space in the parent. I'm also going to set the gap to 0. I'm not going to do a lot of customizing. I'm just going to do just a bit so that you can understand how I think this should work. Maybe now let's add a let's see, let's add that section, newsletter call to action section. I'm also going to add a feature section, and you can see because I'm using auto layout, I can just randomly drag these things into here and they'll just align or arrange themselves the right way. Cool. I think I'm done. For the sake of this video not taking too long, I think for my style it's already too long. So I'm also adding a footer, and I'm also setting that to fixed width. I mean to fill the container. Great. So pretty much we've got a landing page. All right. So now what needs to happen is I'm going to select the header, and I'm going to just zoom into that selection, and I'm going to set the breakpoint of that particular component to be coming from a variable. Right, so you'll see here you have a drop down that says desktop and mobile, which is good. My bad. Yeah, Quasi should be enabled. So you'll see off the bat that if you try and make that tablet, it does sort of respond, but if you try and make that mobile, it breaks, right? So that's not what we want to do. The page, oh, cool. So yes, I've set the page to have its dynamic width, so you can see I've stretched it out to the max and it can't go anywhere beyond that, which is wonderful. Now I want the individual components to be responsive. Had a little issue, so I had to sort of like restart. But yeah, so from this, now I can bind this desktop mode, this drop down, I can bind it to a variable mode, which is very nifty. So I'm gonna say, you'll see that it comes now from Quasi device breakpoint, and I can select that should be bound to that value, and I can do that again and again for as many components that I have in this page that I want to be responsive. I'll have to do that over and over again, and that's the only part that's tedious. So otherwise, what you would have needed to do is you would have needed to duplicate this, maybe even just set it to mobile yourself, and then go in. Oh, sorry, I've already fixed the problems, right? So you'll remember that. Let me just unmap these, right, and see. Let's unmap these so I can make my example. Yeah, cool. So what you would have needed to do otherwise is you would have needed to take this screen, drag it to the side, set it to mobile, if that's the way you work even, and then maybe individually go in and change it that way, right? So by yourself, just going in there and changing the stuff. So the nice thing about these components is that they are definitely made in auto layout because you can see the responsiveness. Because you're looking at a desktop view that's squished down to a mobile size. But if you change that to mobile, then you can see, oh, okay, there's a mobile variant, right? So otherwise, you would have needed to do that. And in my opinion, sometimes in our lives, there's too much to do for us to be spending that time fiddling with screens. I didn't want to say that, but yeah, it is what it is. So I did also go into Untitled and I fiddled with some of its primitives. So I'm just actually now making customizations, right? Maybe let's say this is a dark mode screen. Maybe let's use a different variant for the header. This part we can use brand as a theme. That's cool. I like it. These features, maybe let's use yeah, that one is a bit better. This one is the newsletter call to action. Maybe let's use a screen mockup. And I think that's fine. I think that's enough customization for today. You can change that from dark to light and you see what that looks like. But let's keep it light, right? Cool. So now I have to go in back into these components and map them again to the device breakpoints here, which is cool. And typically, I mean, you could do any other thing, right? So I've mapped these for responsiveness, but you could also map it for dark or light. And that's up to you, right? And I think I have one. I have a state manager that I've set there. So let's maybe say this entire thing, well, it has to be done component by component, I think. Actually, no, sorry. The dark or light mode is actually a global override. So I need to figure out a way to do that. Cool. So now I've got this. For the sake of neatness, I'm just going to wrap this into an auto layout, right? And I'm going to give this a gap of 120. The direction is going to be side to side. I'm also going to give this a padding of 64 on each side, just so that it's got more room. And I'm going to call this workspace. Right? Cool. So what does this mean now? So I've got a design. I mean, I've got the landing page design, which is great. This is in the view, and I'm not sure why. So I can also go into... Sorry, I lost my trail of thought. Yeah, anyway, it's fine. So I'm going to now set these to... I'm going to duplicate these twice because I've already done the work. So I'm going to come into this one and I'm going to set this one to tablet. So remember what I said about the tablet state being sort of like transient. It's somewhere in the ether. It doesn't actually exist in a variant. So this one is going to be set to mobile, and you'll see that the changes just happen automatically without me needing to be there present, making changes and dragging and whatever. It's not what I'm called to do. Cool. So I'm going to now, just for an example, duplicate this one, and I'm going to set this one to tablet. So if you look at this screen here, how you go from desktop to tablet, it sort of like resizes from desktop to tablet. But when I go from mobile to tablet, I would expect this layout, but you can get a different one. So it now takes the mobile breakpoint and resizes that up to tablet, which I think is interesting that it does that. And I'm unsure which one is right at this point in time. Maybe I might lean towards the desktop to tablet version, or yeah, some people might say the mobile to desktop is the right one, but to each their own. But that's what I was trying to give you an example of. Is that's what happens when you resize from mobile to tablet. But yes, essentially that's how you would build one screen. You build it right, and once you've built it right, you just copy and paste, use variables where you can to increase, or I mean to change the size of the screens. You could even use variables to drive the copy of the screens, where you could even like change the language, right? I think Figma did a presentation of that. I have also once done a presentation trying to show my boss how it would look if the app had a different language. And it occurred to me that that is actually a breaking change in some instances. So, yeah. But yes, this is the whole process. This is the entire process of how to make your screens responsive. Again, to recap, you will need a set of variables where you define your tablet, mobile, and desktop screen sizes, and you'll also need a string value that says desktop, tablet, and mobile. You will need that. And then you'll just apply that onto your components. Your components need to have these two variants. I'll show you how that works. Just quickly opening Untitled. So your components need to be built robustly. Sometimes design system maintainers or champions or leads or whatever will do a component. They will use the wrap feature in auto layout that makes it resizable. It will be a single component, and it will resize. So that component will take up the size of the screen or whatever. So with Untitled, you'll see that you have desktop, as you can see here, and you have mobile, as you can see here. So like I said, there is no tablet. It's somewhere in between. It's a function of the auto layout of this particular component, which is great. If it's done right, then you'll be able to do that. So yeah, that's all for today. Hope you find this helpful.